The town of Plainville. Established in 1721 at the geographical center of Connecticut.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Town Council meeting. I'd ask that I have Councilman Nazo lead us in the pledge, if you'll please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I will ask our town clerk to please read the notice of the public hearing for us.
Thank you. In accordance with provisions of Chapter 7, Section 5 of the Charter of the Town of Plainville, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Plainville Town Council at 7 p.m. on Thursday, March 8th, 2018, in the Council Chambers, Municipal Center, to hear public comments on the budget for the Town of Plainville for FY 2019, as proposed by the Town Manager. Dated at Plainville, Connecticut, this first day of March.
Thank you. Robert, you're going to be doing an overview for us of the budget?
Yes, I see a lot of familiar faces here today, but that were here last week. But we'll give a abbreviated summary of the proposed budget as recommended by the town manager. And this is a public hearing to get feedback on that, so I don't want to spend too much time when we give people the opportunity to at least give some feedback. Overall budget is proposed to be a little bit over $60 million, which is an overall increase of 2.62%. We basically split the budget into four major categories, those being the Board of Ed operating, the town government, debt service, and capital projects. Board of Ed operating budget is proposed to increase by a little bit over 5%. Town government a little bit under 2%. Debt service decreasing by $300,000, and capital projects decreasing by $300,000. When you blend those four together, it's a 2.62% increase. I would point out that if not for the health insurance rate increases, and I'm only recommending half of the rate increases that have been proposed, the overall budget change would have been 0.15%. So it's pretty clear what's driving the budget. As far as our expenditure increases over the last 7 years, the green column represents the 2.62% increase that we spoke about in the earlier slides. But the average increase over 8 years, which includes the 2.62% that's being recommended, is 1.5% expenditure increase over the last 7 years. So, on the revenue side, and that's still in flux because of what's happening at the state level, but the intergovernmental revenues based upon what the state legislature adopted as a second-year municipal aid numbers show that that we will see, if that holds up, that would be a decrease of a little bit over $600,000 from what we have budgeted for the current fiscal year. We have a grand list increase based upon new construction that's gone on in town of about a little bit under $200,000. We're proposing to use $300,000 in debt management for revenue. We have some minor changes in use of money, fines and fees and sundry and transfers in. Overall, it would mean a revenue reduction based upon what we know today of a little bit over $100,000. On the general government side, we split the budget up into these categories that you see here: general government, public safety, public works, health and human services, civic and cultural, employee fringe benefits, and sundry, everything else, including some transfers out. It shows an overall increase of $323,000, or 1.88%. You can see that the two major areas of increase include public safety and the employee fringe benefits line items. The major drivers of the town general government increase is payroll, Payroll is in the 1.5% to 2% range for next year, depending upon union contracts. Employee benefits, $155,000. Liability insurance has a slight increase as well. Utility costs, we're still projecting a decrease in utility costs, and that pretty much makes up that actually adds up to more than our somewhere around our increase, the overall increase. So if you just look at those four areas, that's really what's driving the budget. Now for the Board of Education portion of the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Lee and Town Council. So, just to reiterate that all of the budget drivers for us are driven by our vision statement and what we hope to accomplish in the school district, and this document makes its way for every presentation I do. I just wanted to also thank the Town Council for their support in our mid-year reductions that happened this year. While we lost a significant amount of ECS funding, the Town Council was able to reduce our obligation to about $220,000, but just so the town's aware, we did have to reduce our budget significantly this year and put off some expenditures for the foreseeable future. The school budget's funded largely by local funds, so that's why we have these public hearings, so folks know where their monies are going. ECS funding is about 30% of the budget. And I don't think anyone's unaware of the fact that for the past 2 years, for the first time in real recorded history, ECS monies have been going down and included mid-year rescissions, which I would hope that will stop happening, but for now, these things have been very impactful as we plan for our budgets in the coming years. Our fixed budget increases this year, had we done nothing differently, and assuming only a 6% health insurance increase, would have resulted in a board budget increase of 2.85%. However, we got inclinations that the insurance costs were going to be even higher than what we are projecting on this slide, so we knew we had to roll up our sleeves and look at reductions coming out of the gate this year. As Mr. Lee said, health insurance is a huge driver. Just as a matter of quick background, what drove the insurance up this year is that while we anticipated having about 8 claims that would go in excess of $75,000, there were actually 21 claims, or close to triple of what was anticipated. That was the perfect storm that has led to an insurance increase, which on the board side amounts to $1.3 million more than we had last year. And just to put that in perspective, last year our insurance increase was $220,000. So a substantial difference in insurance increases, substantial. Just so the town is aware, our enrollment has held steady. We did an updated enrollment forecast, and it turns out the gentleman that did it previously not misrepresented, but underestimated that our enrollment would remain steady. The blue is the actual forecast, whereas the red is what the previous forecaster looked at. So safe to say that our enrollment holds very steady here in Plainville with only minimal reductions over the next 5 to 10 years. So as I mentioned previously, we did understand the need to come in with a very reasonable budget. We looked very hard at our programs, and we recommended the reductions noted on that slide to our board, feeling that while we don't like to lose staff, we could reduce these staff members without impacting our core academic program. So very briefly, we did reduce a tech ed teacher at the high school, but that'll be absorbed by the remaining tech ed teachers. We've reduced a part-time psychologist, college and career center consultants. At the middle school, we reduced a special ed teacher and a tutor. At Linden Street School, a tutor and a classroom teacher. And at the elementary level in general, we reduced the wellness program by eliminating 3 tutors and 1 para. The program will still run, but in a modified form. Our capital plan is also an area in which we strove to keep programs running, but realizing we needed to be very fiscally responsible. Putting it briefly, we basically cut all items out of the facilities capital budget. So on this slide, you'll see that we had originally wanted to repair the smokestack at the high school and do some cleaning equipment purchasing. That has been postponed. The upgrade to a Linden automation system, as well as the head-end AC unit at the high school, was in our budget, and then the town manager recommended that we put that out for a few years. On the next slide, we about removing an underground storage tank at the middle school, which is no longer in use. So we've decided to postpone that until 5 years or so, when hopefully there'll be a renovation project at the middle school. The technology, however, we did want to maintain our continuous replacement cycle that we plan out in a 5-year cycle. In short, we want to continue our Chromebook program, and we needed to replace some Chromebooks. A projector program at the high school, our projectors there are 10 years old, so we want to start gradually replacing those. We had thought about doing that all in 1 year, but given the financial climate, we're breaking that up over 2 years. The network upgrade will benefit both the town and the school district, and of the $45,000, $22,500 will be reimbursed through E-rate funding. And lastly, Chromebook cases. While we're making the investment in Chromebooks, we also want to make sure they're in cases that keep them safe. So at the very bottom of that slide, you'll note that initially we looked at a capital proposal of $341,000. The Board of Ed approved $253,000, and then the town manager made a few reductions, bringing it down to $224,900, which is a technology capital plan essentially. And the next slide just explains that. The Chromebooks that we're replacing are 3 years old, 3 to 4 years old, and they have about a 3-year shelf life. And though we've had the price of Chromebooks has come down substantially since we started this program. With careful buying, we can get them now for about $200 per device, and the cases run about $4,900. Just to reiterate what I said about the high school projectors, they are now 10 years old. They were purchased during the time of the high school renovation, and they are starting to fail, and they have very expensive light bulbs when they fail. These new systems that we're proposing would have much cheaper maintenance costs. And then I'd like to go to the next slide, in which we show what we proposed this year and what has then been eliminated through board discourse. We're going to continue our preschool program, but we are going to increase parent fees to make sure we're offsetting the costs. Currently, a school resource officer was proposed, and that's currently not in the board's budget. We did successfully add a math teacher at the high school, which is required by state mandatory increases in credits. All kids need to take 4 years of math now instead of 3. We're going to add a Go Kid Go program, which will give our kids in the technology department opportunities to renovate wheelchairs and give them devices to make the kids more accessible throughout the school. And we did propose an indoor track team, which was not approved during the board budget process. So this slide is a summary. The board's budget, looking strictly at the operational side of things in that right-hand column, we're only looking at a 1.39% increase, extremely low. But as I mentioned a few moments ago, the insurance costs are $1.3 million, an exorbitant and rates so that we have never, seen the likes of in quite some time. And that is why the board budget is approved at 5.13% by the Board of Education, for a total board budget of $37 million. And to the left of that shows the big drivers, which, similar to the town, is salaries and benefits. We've been able to do quite a bit of reduction through our transportation. We've worked hard with Mr. Adlerstein's support to get those costs down, and our ongoing utility savings programs are giving us good results, so that allows for reductions there. And, can't leave my podium without saying a few positive things about the school district. Our kids are doing a great job. They're leaving having done 5,000 hours of community service. They earn college credit while in high school, avoiding $1.1 million in tuition costs. They take high-level courses. They receive a lot of scholarship monies due to their studious nature. Our kids, are 84% go on to pursue higher ed, 99% leave with a solid plan, and 72% get into their first choice college. And I will now turn the podium back over to Mr. Lee. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. The last two categories in the budget is debt payments. Proposing that we budget $4.4 million for our debt service for this year. About $1 million of it would go towards projects that were previously bonded from about $1 million, and the Board of Education close to $3 million. And with this 4.4, we would still be returning to the debt management fund $437,000. We're using the $4.4 million because that's, at some point in time in the near future, the debt service is going to come back up. And we're anticipating it will not go above the $4.4 million. So we're trying to keep that at a level, which is something that the council set in place several years ago. Capital improvement plan, although I'm somewhat concerned about the amount of monies being proposed in the capital improvement plan, bringing it down by $300,000 to $800,000. I think there are significant needs above that, but given our existing climate with reduced state aid to municipalities and recognizing that we've reduced it to $800,000, almost a little bit more than half of that, and that this does not include the 800 does include the Board of Education, but on the town side, these four projects here are really the major cost factors involved with the recommendation. There are 11 other smaller requests, averaging about $16,000 apiece as well. As far as the mill rate is concerned, with the supplemental tax bill and the actions that were taken by the council in January, actually in December, the mill rate increased to 33.43 under the proposed budget, and based upon the revenues, the best available information we have today, the mill rate would, if everything went forward as proposed, would be an increase of 0.41 mils, or an increase in taxes from the current mill rate of 1.24%. However, as far as what people paid for taxes on July 1st of last year, that was based upon a mill rate of 32.68. This proposed mill rate of 33.84 is a difference of 1.16 mils, which is an increase from July 1st tax bill of last year to July 1st tax bill of this year, all things being equal, of 3.5%. Our mill rate history over the last 6 years, and this includes what's being proposed for next year as well, is an average tax increase over that period of time of 1.5%. As far as the tax impact to the average homeowner, we're using the average home value of $175,000, which we tax at 70%, or $122,500. Fiscal year 18 taxes would have been a little bit over $4,000. Under, based upon the revenues that we're aware of today, that would be a little bit over, well, right around $4,145, which is a difference of $142 to the average taxpayer. As far as the allocation of the tax impact, the reduction of state aid is about $41, equals about $41 of the $142. Increase to the average taxpayer is the health insurance impact, which is the major impact, makes up $96 of the overall to the average taxpayer, and all other, being the town, the rest of the Board of Education operating, debt, and capital improvement, it makes up about $5 of the overall increase. So it's fairly clear what's driving the budget, what the causes of the tax differences to the average taxpayer, and look forward to working with the council with respect to finalizing this budget over the next several weeks during our work sessions. I would point out that we do have some work sessions scheduled beginning next Monday. That work session would be at 6:30. The Tuesday work session would be at 6:45. The Wednesday one would be at 6:30. I would point out that the Tuesday, April 13th session will include the review of the Board of Education budget that evening, beginning somewhere around 8 o'clock, I understand. And then we have, if needed, we have work sessions scheduled for the following Wednesday, April 21st at 6:30, and Thursday, April 22nd at 6:30. All of these meetings will be held here in the Town Council chambers. And are open
I'm sorry,
to
you're saying April, you mean March, right?
Yes, I do mean March. Sorry about that. It's probably, I'm doing that more often than I should be. Yes, I do mean March. Thank you, Scott. And all meetings will be held in the Town Council chambers and are open to residents and other interested citizens, and they will be taped by Nutmeg, so if you can't make the meeting, watch it at home as well. So that's all I have, so I'll take
Thank
my
you.
seat. All right.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you to Superintendent Brummett for your presentations. I know you've done this a couple of times already, and now it's the turn for the public to speak to the budget that's being presented that the council will be deliberating on. I open up the public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak on the budget, please come to the podium, state your name and address. Does anybody wish to speak to the budget? Okay, we can go home. Oh, John. Come right up, come right up.
John Kislick, 65 Forest Avenue. You know, don't be too happy about what I said at the last meeting. You know,
You speak the truth.
there's always room for you to do a little chopping. You know, I realize that you're stuck with this health insurance and what the state did to us. I'm not happy, and there's 10,000 other residents in this town that we don't know what they're going to do or how they feel with the average, you know, that $142 interest or 1.16 mils. But one other thing this council's got going for them, you see the amount of people here today from the public. Probably half of the people in this town don't even know what's going on. And the other half of that half isn't going to come out and vote. So you're at an advantage for passing whatever you present. Anyway, with my feelings, I know I'm on probably the lower half of average pay scale in town as a citizen. And we just got a huge increase in Social Security. And out of that, they let me keep $8.10 a month. So I have about $97 if I save it to go towards my tax increase. So I feel good about that. But there's other things too. We have quite a few top-end teachers, and I'm hoping that maybe some of them are getting ready to retire. And we bring in new blood, so we start lower. And one other thing that's in the presentation, transportation. By contract, it's going up $41,000 this year, and the whole contract is $1.4 million. And the reason I'm bringing this up, New Britain just recently put it out to bids, and I heard they're saving a huge amount of money. So I want to suggest to Board of Ed, maybe you think about that when your contract is up, you know? And I feel the same way about capital projects that we have. We seem to be sticking to the same architect. And I don't like that. I think we have to keep people honest. When I was on the building committee, we had 2 different architects for Tofflon and the high school. And I think we have to do that to keep people honest and get some better numbers. People will be fighting for some of this stuff. You keep giving it to the same person time after time, it's not good. You have to keep it honest. But as far as the overall budget, I'm just speaking for myself. I see what we're up against. I don't like it. I don't like what the state is doing. It's hurting me in other ways too. And all I can do is ask you to see if you find a little bit more somewhere and chop it a little for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak to the budget tonight? Mr. Frangos?
Lou Frangos, 10 Fairbank Street. I'd just like to say, all things considered, I think it's a well-prepared budget so far. It's $1.5 million, but circumstances are what they are. I think it's well done. I'm going to ask a general question because I don't really understand it, and you can chuckle if you want to. Well, one of the impacts functions that was impacted is public safety, an increase. What exactly composes public safety? Is it police department? And what else?
Fire.
And fire.
Fire.
Those are the 2?
And emergency management. Those 3. Emergency management.
Animal control.
Animal control.
Thank you very much. Let's see, another off-the-wall question. The tax increase is 1.5. Is there any way, and I think I know the answer, is there any way we can take anything out of undesignated funds to relieve some of the pressure on the taxpayers of Plainville.
I can give you my opinion on it. Certainly others are welcome to weigh in. That's not going to help us very much. We also have some other obligations that we're going to have to use our fund balance for to help replenish our health insurance fund right now. And if we take the money out this year from our fund balance, where are we going to get it next year? If we're going to use it just to balance this year, next year, we're going to be dependent on using more of that. So it's probably a very slippery slope to get involved in when you start depending on drawing down your fund balance just to balance your budget. We need to do this with dependable revenue streams and adjust our expenditures in order to do this in the right way. You know, there are cities and towns that have done that, and the state of Connecticut has done that, and the outcomes are not good. So we do not want to be part of that.
The current year's budget included $200,000 to of unassigned fund balance to support the revenues. And the budget this year continues that recommendation to continue to use $200,000. Because there wasn't a change, it wasn't depicted on the on the slides. But the budget does include using $200,000, which is what was used last year.
Thank you. And the last, this one goes to our Board of Education, who, by the way, I've made it known that I think you folks are doing a fine job. The thing that had me a little perplexed is, and I had seen it in the papers, enrollment. I think the good doctors answered the question. There was one paper that said, one day said that the enrollments were down, people may have to go. The following day, enrollments were up, and I think that alludes to whoever was doing the forecasting, I guess. The only question I have regarding that subject is, what the BOE now is projecting is an increase in students. Are they, I don't know how to phrase this question, but are they Plainville residents, or are we counting on out-of-town students to bolster our enrollments?
If you'd like to answer, sure, that would. Yep.
The graphic that I showed on the slideshow basically shows a steady enrollment, not an increase or a decline, fairly steady. And we are not projecting any additional more students coming in from out of town, rather maintaining the current level that we have. Okay, sure.
And with that, I thank you all.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak to the council on the budget? Yes, sir. David? All right, Joanne, you go first. It's okay. Go ahead. Come on.
Go on, Joanne, that's fine.
Joanne Edmond, 166 West Main Street. I'm going to do a little picking because, first of all, the last town council meeting, it wasn't clear that it was a town council meeting. I wouldn't have been able to go anyway, I was out of town, but it was not clear to quite a few people that it was a town council meeting. We will have to be 10 steps ahead of all of you now because you do get a little tricky. So the word special has got to be watched very carefully. So that's one thing. I know start picking on certain parts of the budget, you're going to do what you want to do anyway between the municipal and the Board of Ed. But this Wheeler School business really bothers me. I know it hasn't started yet, you haven't got the approvals. But I think that you could forget about that crumb rubber crap courtyard. I don't think that that should be even included. The architects are running away with our money. And I have heard, we just had a little discussion about out-of-town kids coming and filling the quota. I've heard there's going to be 45 out-of-towners coming here to Plainville to fill the quota at Wheeler School. If this is true, this is very bad, then you don't need to renovate like new. And it's not advisable to do what I've heard that you're planning to do. And I'm going to, as I say, the figures, the health care plan. Boy, I hope you can find a good health care plan. The people should not be responsible for these huge overages. There's just so much money. I know there's millions in that piggy bank, but you keep hitting that piggy bank and it's not going for, that's our money. And it's not going to help the local taxpayer, it's going to help the employees, which, how nice of us to do that. But that isn't what it was supposed to be. There should have been some long-range thinking about how bad that policy was. And I hope that you can come up with a good policy so that it's not going to ever affect the taxpayer again. I'm in the taxpayer's corner. Why not? Now, I don't know what else to talk about, but I will say, I'm going to end with this. I was shocked when I watched the Nutmeg film today. And Mr. Nazzo, I have to call you out. We don't always agree on things. Most of the time we don't. But I think it was very wrong of you to call out Roberta Lauria and her group, that they left before you spoke, because that's their business. It sounded like you were whining because they left. Why not? If they don't want to hear something, they're very discouraged about a lot of things anyway. This trail business has caused people lack of sleep. It's a horrible thing that's hitting people. And I think you really should think next time before you speak.
Can we get back to the budget, Joanne? Can you confine your comments to the budget? The public hearing is
Well,
really
this
for
is
that
part of the
purpose.
budget meeting last time, which was also a town council meeting.
Tonight is a budget public hearing.
Well,
I would like you to stick to
I
that
said it.
topic.
I said it anyway. It's out there.
All right.
Think before you talk. And then I did not like what everybody said about being, you all were in bed with each other as far as the trail was concerned. So I got that in anyway, too.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the council regarding the budget?
Well, I said it.
David Spencer, 127 Milford Street Extension. Whatever you were expecting to receive from the state last year, you didn't receive. You didn't receive the full amount, and I know they've promised us a certain amount. I wouldn't count on that either, and I hope you're making provisions and plans for that. They haven't balanced the budget. Some of the actions the governor's taken are going to make it very difficult to balance that budget. And whatever they've promised you, the old proverb, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Whatever they promised you are those two birds in the bush at this time. My own personal experience, I used to work for a company that was in danger of going under. And at the time, they took the extraordinary measure of hiring a consultant to come in and analyze the business. And they spent thousands of dollars that they really didn't have to try to save that business. And the bottom line is, in the end, some people lost their jobs. Some people who are underutilized were given extra duties. And Then there are other various things in the systems and the way the business was being run. Now, if we were, say, the Board of Education, the taxpayer would be considered the customer to the Board of Education. Our customers, if we could operate like the Board of Education or the town government operates, is we just charge our customers, the taxpayers, more. Now, in the real world, if we were to do that with this business, it would have been all to our competitors' benefits and we would have gone under. I mean, they invested the money to save that business, and they did. You know, it was, you know, it hurt, but they were able to reorganize in such a way that it did save the business. And personally, I think a 5% increase for the Board of Education at this time is an outrageous amount to demand of the taxpayers. They were asked by the town council to reduce their spending by less than 0.5%. And I didn't see a really serious cut. I see things like, okay, we're going to put off fixing some chimney and a couple of other cosmetic things. We're not really looking into the real serious problems. I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, I haven't seen one. I don't know if anybody's looking into maybe administrative costs. What is the administrative cost for a student? I mean, we're considered a small high school. Why do we need 3 principals? I mean, why are there 13 kids in a class in the Linden School kindergarten? You know, why are there, you know, do we need as many secretaries as we need? I mean, is anybody making these hard decisions? I mean, if we can just pass off these costs, and it's, I mean, why are we doing a pre-K? The churches and the private sector was doing a wonderful job. Why does the public sector have to get into the pre-K? I mean, studies of the Head Start program found out that whatever was gained by their pre-K Head Start program was lost by the 3rd grade. And I know the superintendent has quoted a study where $1 invested brings 7 in return. All I know is when President Obama tried to use that, you know, the Washington Post, which has spent the last 10 years protecting and defending him, gave him 2 Pinocchios, which means it's not true. So I would think, I don't know if the Board of Education is willing or even capable of really doing a self-analysis. So that's why I'm just throwing this out, that maybe some kind of consultant can look at things and find out how things can be run more efficiently. And it might be money worth spending. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak to the budget?
Andrea Saunders, 55 Fawn Drive. I just want to address 2 things that were brought up. Number one, I know it's not really budget related, but in relation to the Wheeler project, yes, part of the terms of when the Wheeler project is done, the school, Wheeler will have to increase their student population by 45 kids. That does not mean they have to come out of district. One of the things I believe the superintendent did put in the paper was that there's going to be a committee set up that will determine where the kids will come from. They could come from one of the other 2 elementary schools. So please do not misunderstand when we say increase enrollment in Wheeler, that does not mean they're coming from out of district. Second, as far as the health insurance, I don't think there's one board member that was extremely happy that we had to ask the public for a 5.13% increase. 3.74% of that was just insurance. Everybody knows it was an atrocious year. We had a lot of claims that we didn't anticipate. And while people are very upset that they're having to take care of that, there were many years And I know this, Chairman Puglisi knows this, we've negotiated contracts where we had $1 million savings in health insurance. And on those particular years where we used that to offset, no one was complaining that we were saving all of the money. Unfortunately, the HSA is not working anymore, and we are all, diligently between the town and the board looking at an alternative plan because obviously the HSA is not working. So no one is no one is more unhappy that I had to come ask you guys for a 5.13% increase, if anybody knows who I am. But this is what we have to do. It's obligated by union contracts. And so I think people, we're trying to do better next year, but unfortunately, this is where we are now, and we have to deal with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak to the budget? Robert?
Just wanted to add one thing with regards to health insurance, because there seems to be some confusion with regards to the cost. What I mean by that is one of the options that we are looking into is getting into a fully insured plan, not a self-insured plan, but a fully insured plan that's managed by the state of Connecticut. And those rates are not based upon Plainville's particular experience. It's based on the pool's experience. So those rates that they're currently charging and have been charging would add to our budget about our health insurance budget about $1.5 million a year, which is basically equivalent to what we're proposing as an increase between the Board of Education and the town of Plainville. What that means in my mind, and I really want you to understand this, is that our current costs are $1.5 million less as a self-insured plan than a fully insured plan. And so we've been saving $1.5 million each year when compared against the fully insured plan, which is what we're looking to go towards. We've been saving that amount each year for the last 5, 6, 7 years. So when you do that math, the increase that we're talking about now really pales in comparison when we talk about the savings, and I think that's what Chairperson Saunders is speaking to, and people should understand that. The other thing is, with regards to the Board of Education's budget, it should be remembered that over the last 6 or 7 years, the average Board of Education increase on the expenditure side has been 1%. 1%. So when we talk about it being 5% because of the health insurance budget, we've just explained the reasons for that, and the fact that we've been under, with the plan that we have, which some people call terrible today, because we're looking at 1 year. But when you look at it over a long period of time, we've saved a significant amount of dollars under this plan. That's one of the reasons why, that's one of the reasons why the Board of Education's budget has come in over the last 7 or 8 years, an average of 1%. So when we talk about 5% and we talk about how outrageous that is, or whatever, I think that's really unfair when you don't look at the entire picture. So and that's what we're trying to explain to people, and hopefully some people will understand that.
Anybody else wish to speak? John, you've already had your turn. Does anybody else wish to speak that has not had an opportunity yet? Gail?
Gail Black, 4 CNC Avenue. I haven't really looked at the budget, but just with all that's going on, I don't think we're going to win whatever we do. Nobody's going to be happy. I mean, let's just take the state, for instance. They're doing terribly. And I'm just going to say this, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but my dad brought me up anti-union. I don't think union helps me, or helps things. But at any rate, I got laid off in 2001, and I played around on the internet. And I found a chart, and it said 1 in 10 people of the state for California, or work for the state in California. Then I looked at Connecticut. This is 2001. 1 in 5 people. That means 20% of the people we were paying for them to work for us. I don't know what it is now. They laid people off, but then they hire them back in a different department. I know, because I had a temp job over at UConn. I saw the way things worked. And so that's the way the state is in Malloy. It's just not going well there. But I just don't think, also, the other day, they were trying to figure out something about the drug cost. And I think that's gonna affect your health insurance. The cost of drugs is like ridiculous. And, it's just, I've called companies and told them I'm not taking their magazines when 30% of their magazine contains drug ads. I'm calling senators out of state to complain about it. I'm on a drug, and when I'm on Social Security, I'm really going to be complaining. And so I did try to get a hold of the guy. I can't remember his name. He was from the Shoreline, and he was running the thing regarding the cost of drugs. But I think that's a big issue that you're going to run into. I don't know how many people you have, but the drug cost is ridiculous. And the drug I take, they raised it for the stockholders. So that's the kind of thing, it's not too often that somebody follows. When you get a drug, I mean, I've been following the company. I followed when they sold it. I know who the CEO is. So, you have to keep, and then you have to call them and yell at them. And then you have to call your senators. So this isn't anything you can, I mean, we're not going to win, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak that hasn't spoken? Anybody else? Last chance? Okay.
I have a question, which is a rebuttal to his,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Joanne.
well,
What did you say?
I have a question in rebuttal to what he said.
You have a question? You can ask a question if you want.
Can?
Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah,
All right.
if there was a savings every year up until now, was that actual cash? Did you actually have that in that kitty so that it could be used for the rainy day? Or was it just on paper?
You realize that if not for the savings that we had by not having the increases that would normally come if we were fully insured, that's the reason why the Board of Education's budget came in at 1%. One of the reasons why the Board of Education's budget came in at 1% rather than 3%. So it's not cash in hand, but it's lower. But the increases are significantly lower as a result of savings that we had in the health insurance plan. So it's not necessarily cash in hand. It's the fact that we didn't have to spend as much money for health insurance, which would have driven up their expenditures. Okay, do you understand?
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind. Was it cash in hand or was it on
Yeah.
paper or what? Because if it was cash in hand, I mean,
Yeah.
and it was not spent for something else,
No.
as a lot of times these things can happen.
No.
Cost avoidance rather than
Then,
cash
you know,
in hand. We didn't
the
have
old
to spend that much
adage is
money.
save your money for a
Correct.
rainy day.
We didn't have those expenses.
Kids don't know that adage anymore.
Yep.
A lot of people don't.
Thank you.
And the rainy days do come.
Okay, we know that all too well. All right, Mr. Frangos, you have one question.
Yeah, one question.
You're allowed, then that'll be it.
Frangos, 10 Fairbanks Street, and I will make it quick. I'm addressing this directly to the town council. What I find intriguing, and this has been going on, and it surfaced again today, is the Wheeler School project too large? Could that be reduced? Could that be, now why would I bring that up? We have to relocate students to put them into a building? Why? Why do we have to take 45 children from other locations and put them into this building? So if we're looking for cost savings, why don't we just, never mind expanding the building, renovate as new with the existing building? It seems this thing,
We're not expanding the building.
well, something has to be happening to get 45 more students in there, and it's Mr.
Because
Lee.
it's somewhat obscure because of the state rules, and it's somewhat complicated, but what they're saying is that the school itself is over their square footage capacity, over their square footage for the population that's there. And in order for us to get full reimbursement, we have to add 45 students.
Well, why don't we reduce the,
We can't
I'm not
reduce.
challenging, I'm
Well,
just asking.
The other option is to reduce the space itself, would be the demolished portion of the school. So we can either demolish some square footage, existing square footage, not new square footage, because there's no new square footage in the building.
Well, yeah,
Can I add one thing, though?
Yes,
Wheel-
sir.
If I'm wrong, let me know, but when Wheeler was built, for some reason, they built extremely large class sizes or square footage. The classrooms themselves were much bigger than what I believe was ordinarily
And they
built
added,
at
and
the
they
time.
added a gym and a library, and the state allowed it.
And a music
and-
room.
And a music room, and so the choices that we have is demolish a portion of the school in order to bring the size down, not any new space. So it is somewhat frustrating, but in order to get the full reimbursement, they're saying you gotta add 40, or they gave other options that we can move some other administrative people in there, other programs in there as well. So it may not be 45 students, but it's not because of an increase in square footage. It's because of their rules, which are, we have to follow, unfortunately.
If we want money from the state.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, again, and I don't want to take up everybody's time here, but in other words, you keep using the term demolish. I'm using the term renovate. All right? If you can consolidate the building, all right?
No, we have to
That's why we
reduce
have architects.
we have to reduce square footage.
Yes.
Or increase student population.
So if we turned around and said, okay, instead of student population, just my own clarity,
Yep.
the option is if we have to keep the same size, in essence,
No, we
keep
have
the
to
same
lower it.
size to get state money.
No, we have to increase the student population.
I'm sorry. We have to increase it to get the state money.
Yes,
Population-wise or the building?
Students.
students.
Okay, and I'm sorry to do this, I keep going back in that circle again. So in other words, if we, not demolish, I use the term renovate. If we decided to do that, perhaps there'd be a cost saving architecturally, construction-wise, and
There
otherwise.
wouldn't
We are
be.
renovating.
It
The
wouldn't
state will
be.
turn around and say to us,
I don't believe there would be, because now you're demolishing interior walls, you're demolishing, is much more expensive to demolish and rebuild something smaller than it is just to go ahead and look for the 45 students, in my opinion, if anyone thinks differently, but right now, we are not, there is very little demolishing that's going on with the school compared to,
if anything, it sounds like it's expanding.
Can I say something?
no, it's
Yes, ma'am, and I'm
Go
gonna,
ahead and finish, Chris.
The footprint
Finish your
is
thought.
essentially the same at Wheeler. There is some areas being moved and there's some minor things going on, but essentially the state has told us you either need to increase your student population or you need to decrease the footprint of the school. And it is much less expensive to add the students with the existing footprint than to start tearing down walls and renovating from that perspective, if that makes sense.
yes, the only question I'll say to you with that, is that anybody's taking a look at that?
Yes, I believe the building, the project, the capital building
Project
project
building
committee.
committee.
And that was a while ago, though. I mean, that's a couple years at least ago.
But, and I'm gonna leave it at this, because I don't
And
wanna.
I just want to add on to what has already been said. Back when the school was renovated, my children were at the school. And at the time, that was a $3 or $4 million project. It was not a complete renovation, but they added a very large gymnasium, they added a media center, and they added a music room. Back in that time, Lou, the state of Connecticut was reimbursing towns a far different amount than they are today. So the per square footage reimbursement rate was much, much different than it is now. Now that that school doesn't have as large a population, they're looking at it saying, the square footage doesn't justify what we can give back to you. So they are telling us that is a problem. Even though back when that project was done, it was perfectly acceptable. But all the rules have changed in terms of square footage, reimbursements, how we can do this. So it really is, it is a problem. You know, when the rules get changed and you're trying to just do some some of these things if it's
I-
problematic.
I don't want to beat the Wheeler School project to death.
Right.
All I'm saying is, from just a practical standpoint, in my world, years gone by, all right? If I wanted to buy something, it costs X amount of dollars. And they said, in other words, I bought a car with chrome and everything on the thing, and it cost me X amount of dollars. And they say, okay, if I took the chrome off, this is how much money you save. And that's my logic. We got the school going the way it's going now. We're going to have to bring somebody in. Why can't we do something, if we did with the school, save money? And that was my only, and I don't want to beat this Wheeler to death thing.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you for the second chance.
Would like to add just one thing to it, and maybe it'll, it shouldn't confuse you anymore, but
It's easy.
the point is, we only have to move, if the decision is made to move 45 students into that school, we only have to do it for 1 year. You could pull the 45 out the next year, and that'll satisfy the state. Just so you know. Just so you know. You just have to put them in there for 1 year,
The
and
way
then
things
pull
are
them
going
out,
in
and they're
Hartford,
happy.
even that makes sense to
And
me.
they're happy. And they're happy.
Thank you for the second shot.
Sure, they can't do it with the building.
Okay, Joanne, I think we're done. You know, everybody's had a second time up there, so if there are no other people that wish to speak to the public hearing on the budget, I will thank you for your time, and we will close it for now. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks very much.
Thank you.